Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to sneak up here really quick before Marianne comes on because we have an exciting little pre-show. We are revealing the winners of this year's Ulrich Alliance Scholarship. So my name is Justin Bjork, and I am the current chair. I'm up here joined with Ernie Kind, vice chair. We're here tonight representing a growing group of Ulrich volunteers that donate their time, energy, ideas, and talents to enhance the Ulrich's outreach across campus and the greater city of Wichita. We have members of all ages, from high school students to retirees, and they serve in a variety of roles at the Ulrich, but are probably best known as our outstanding docents and our events committee that work behind the scenes to make all of these events and exhibition openings memorable and unique.
Every year, the Ulrich Alliance raises money to fund 2 scholarships that have traditionally been awarded on an annual basis. But we have a dream of extending them to twice a year, with 2 winners each semester instead of just 2 a year. So if you're interested in helping us achieve that dream, please talk to me, Justin, or Ann Keeper. However, today we are delighted to award a graduate student and an undergraduate, each with a scholarship of $1,000. Our 2 recipients this year each scored very well on our panel of 4 final judges, which are themselves distinguished local artists and experts. They take their roles seriously and thoroughly enjoy the process, despite the difficulties that come with making these decisions. So without further ado, let's bring up our 2 women.
Okay, our first award is our undergraduate, and so that is for the students in their junior, senior, or mid-program reviews, and we had 15 entries this year, so it's amazing. It's more and more every year, but very difficult decision. Our expert judges did a fantastic job, and selection for undergraduate winner is printmaking major, Jimena Trujillo. Come on up and I have a check for you. Dun, da, da. Yeah, good job. That's what's photo up. Yeah, you got it. Make it.
I read.
Yeah. Same side. Yeah, you keep it. That's yours to put on your wall. That's so good. Okay. And next is the award for our graduate division. We had 4 entries this year. They were all fantastic as well, and is an extremely close competition. I hear the judges labored over it for quite some time, but in the end, they chose Zoe Gillis, another printmaking major. Is Zoe in the building?
Yeah.
Well, Ernie will accept the check on Zoe's behalf, and we'll take a picture and we'll send it to her. Maybe we'll tag her on the Instagram and say, surprise. Okay. Yep. Cute.
Congratulations to both of this year's winners and to everyone that entered. Everyone who entered this year's competitions did outstanding work, and we want to thank you all for making the judges' job so difficult. Each of you should take great pride in your talents and accomplishments, and we encourage you to enter again next year. And the work is up, so if you didn't get an opportunity to see it after the lecture, you can run around, mostly on, all on the 2nd floor. Right. Is the gallery open? Okay. Okay. Well, we want to thank you all. And now let's get on with our program.
Hello. Test, test. Nope. I'm just going to hold it too. Good evening, guys. Congratulations again to the scholarship winners. Yeah, such an honor. I'm Joe Reinert. I'm curator of modern and contemporary art at the Ulrich. And I'd like to thank and commend you all for coming out in our beautiful spring weather tonight. I assure you it will be worth it because this speaker is someone who has a very close relationship with the Ulrich and with our sculpture collection. It's going to be really special. She's a well of knowledge and stories. I'm very excited to introduce her, but you all know what's coming. It's time for me to remind you of the calendar, of what I hope is on your calendar, upcoming events. So first, our Ulrich curatorial intern, Brisa Perez. Any Brisa Perez fans? Yay, Brisa! She's curated her own pop-up exhibition using the museum's collection works, and that's going to be on view beginning this Friday. Oh God, that's tomorrow. Tomorrow in the Cadman Gallery Looking Glass, which is in the Radigan Student Center. So we're going to have a small reception in recognition of all of her hard work and her show at the Cadman Gallery in the RSC, and that's Tuesday at 2:30 to 4. It's come and go. Please join us. She's put a lot of hard work into it and really into her whole semester, as all of our interns have, and we're really, really proud of them. But if you can't make the reception, the show is going to be on view through May 31st. Secondly, for those of you who don't know, we have Colombian artist Gleo on campus right now. She's painting an enormous mural on the Dirksen outdoor amphitheater walls. Gosh, go by and see her in progress and in process if you haven't. It's really special. She's the talented genius behind the Horizontes grain elevator mural. Pretty special. So next Friday, May 3rd, we hope you'll join us for a big celebration at the Dirksen Amphitheater for the mural's unveiling and for sort of like a pre-Cinco de Mayo celebration. Kind of a party. We're going to have live music, performers, food trucks, and of course art. So that's 4:30 to 7 again next Friday. And lastly, I'm sad to have to report this, but our program with artist Randy Regier next Thursday has been postponed. Just due to some unforeseen circumstances. But we will be rescheduling that event, so we'll announce a new date as soon as we can. Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce our visiting speaker. If you've ever happened upon sculpture work on campus wherein the most friendly-looking people wearing the coolest hats are lovingly attending to the bronze with what appears to be wooden toothbrushes, you've seen Marianne Marti and her team. Marianne co-founded Russell Marti Conservation Services in partnership with Bob Marti in 1988 as a company dedicated to the care and preservation of art objects and historical artifacts. Their specialized focus is the conservation of sculpture in the media of bronze, stone, terracotta, plaster, and wood. Their approach combines a strong formal grounding in the theory and techniques of modern art conservation, a strong background in the visual arts and crafts, and extensive practical experience in the field. Marianne and the team have worked on objects at such institutions and entities as the St. Louis Art Museum, it's a long list, the George Washington Carver National Monument, the City of St. Louis, Missouri, Sedgwick County, the City of Buffalo Arts Commission, the Nelson Atkins Museum, the Kemper Museum, the Philbrook, the Wichita Art Museum, the National Baseball Hall of Fame, the Abraham Lincoln Tomb in Illinois, an original bell from the battleship USS Arizona in Honolulu, and many, many more, just pages, pages and pages. And the Ulrich Museum has been working with Russell Marti for nearly 3 decades to keep our outdoor sculptures bathed and waxed and looking their best. It takes regular maintenance treatments to keep up with the counteracting effects of the elements, which being outside is a necessity for a healthy work of art, right? But then there are the inevitable longer-term effects that take their toll, and Marianne and the Russell Marti team have also performed much lengthier, major conservation work on countless works in our collection over the years. Most recently, they've worked on Robert Indiana's Love, Barbara Hepworth's Figure Archaean, George Ricky's 2 Lines Oblique Down, and Milton Hebald's Harvest, all of which underwent major treatments just in the past year. Many of you will remember the 10-year-long investigation and restoration of our Miro mosaic. Just an incredible and historic feat, both as the community kind of coming together to make it happen, and then the enormous responsibility and mental and physical task of the conservation work itself. And despite the constant workload, Marianne says that coming to the Ulrich for the sculpture treatments feels like coming home. That's what she's commented to me, saying. And that it feels like visiting old friends, which she's referring to the sculptures, not the staff. But I do also want to comment quickly on a personal note that I feel one of Marianne's most remarkable attributes is her impulse to educate. On more than one account, I've had student interns ask me, if they could shadow Marianne, and shadow can be a fancy word for awkwardly hover. So I'm always a little apprehensive, and Marianne's work philosophy always seems to be just as much about sharing information as it is about applying it. She never shies away from talking to not just those planned visitors, but the random, curious passersby, that just can't help themselves because, frankly, the practice of bronze conservation is just so interesting. And now I'll let the expert expand on that. We're so glad she's here. Please help me welcome Marianne Marti.
That's beautiful. It's funny. Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you so much. Well, Joe gave a wonderful synopsis of the talk already. Thank you. It just outlined everything I'm going to say then. And I do feel like I'm coming home here for not just the friendly sculptures, but the people that really make it great. Well, when Joe asked me to give a talk on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of this wonderful Martin H. Bush outdoor sculpture collection, I responded, "No problem. You mean our usual dog and pony show about maintenance of outdoor sculpture?" And I really enjoy giving that kind of talk about the whys and hows of what we do. And Joe said, "No, something more along the lines of your experience over the many years that you've worked here and your thoughts and insights." So that really got me delving into old treatment reports and files and mountains of pictures. Some were even slides. It's been that long. Do you know what those are? You younger people? And so in doing that, it just showed me how much this collection has been such a continuum in our professional and personal lives. And I'll try to share some of that with you today. Many of you are probably used to seeing us here on campus, seeing various people working on the sculptures twice a year. We descend in the spring and the fall, and you'll see us all over campus for a few weeks and then we're gone. And who are we? What are we doing? Who brings us here? And hopefully I'll be able to answer all those questions today. The main part of our team, besides me and my husband Bob Marti, are Andy Breidenbach in the upper right, and Justin Grotry. And however, over the years, we've worked with a number of many people, including several interns who've gone on to art conservation careers. I have to start out by saying that our company, Russell Marti Conservation Services, wouldn't be where we are today if it weren't for Wichita State University. In fact, Russell Marti wouldn't even exist because I wouldn't have been born. My mother, Mary Faith Pallett Russell, grew up in Riverside on Nims and then on Litchfield, and she attended Riverside Elementary School and graduated from North High. Then in 1946, she attended Wichita University, where she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Sociology in 1950. She received a Jesse R. Barr Fellowship to study at Washington University in St. Louis, where she got her Master's in Sociology and completed her coursework and research for her PhD. While in St. Louis, she met my future father, Bill Russell, and their life together took them to Massachusetts, where my siblings and I were born, then to northern France for 5 years, and finally to St. Louis, where I spent most of my growing up. After spending formative years visiting the museums of Europe, back in St. Louis, I pursued a dream that began when I was 12, which was the day my sister and I, by chance, got to visit the art conservation studio, the Paintings Conservator studio at the St. Louis Art Museum. And I was so awed by what I saw there that I decided then and there I wanted to be a paintings conservator. I studied art history at Washington University with the goal to go on to graduate school in art conservation. And at this point, I was still thinking about being a paintings conservator. But while at WashU, I apprenticed at Washington University's Center for Archaeometry, which was a sculpture conservation laboratory headed by Phoebe Dent-Weil, who's seen here on the right. And Phoebe is a true Renaissance woman, a scholar of art history and art techniques, all kinds of things. She even has a divinity degree. And she was the first art conservator to really study the effects of atmospheric corrosion on outdoor bronzes. And before her, nobody was really looking at bronzes. People thought that the green corrosion crust was protective, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's very, very detrimental. And Phoebe also, as an art historian, she delved into the art historical aspects of bronzes and studied artist intent and has written wonderful papers about that subject itself. And she also developed treatment techniques for dealing with the problems of outdoor bronzes. So working as an apprentice for 3 years at the Center for Archaeometry, it changed my trajectory from paintings conservation to sculpture. And as Phoebe once said, paintings conservators just don't know what fun is.
Is that my copy?
And oh, was she right. Also, at the Center for Archaeometry, I met Bob Marti, who was working with Phoebe in developing these treatments for outdoor bronzes. And that's Bob on the right with the big hair. And I went on to graduate school in Cooperstown, New York, then did my third-year internship at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, working in the sculpture department focusing on stone, terracotta, ivory, and plaster sculptures under John Larson and this amazing team of conservators. After I graduated in 1987 with a master's in art conservation, Bob and I got married and we started Russell Marti Conservation Services. And now I'm going to illustrate Joe's introduction. So we were soon busy with works for clients such as the Baseball Museum in Cooperstown, that's the cornerstone of Ebbets Field, and the Historic Preservation Agency, where we worked on sculptures at state historic sites, and this is an antique gaslight collection at the David Davis Mansion in Bloomington, Illinois. As Joe said, we also did a lot of maintenance on Lincoln's tomb in Springfield, Illinois. And yes, this is the real reason why we go into art conservation and actually why all the museum people go into collections management or whatever, and it's to satisfy our touchy-feely need when we're around art and do it legally. And as Joe mentioned, we are also busy working for the city of Buffalo on their amazing art collection. In the early 90s, after a visit home to Wichita, my mother reported that she and my dad had visited the WSU campus and that they now had the most amazing outdoor sculpture collection. And my mom, being the best cheerleader anybody could have, said, and maybe you can work on it. And this was information I filed away, but at the time we were still busy with other projects. And we still do work for Buffalo. But I thought, well, maybe we could. This collection, as, again, you all know, but it's the vision of WSU President Dr. Clark Alberg and the first Ulrich Museum director, Dr. Martin H. Bush. And they started this collection in the early 1970s. And under Martin Bush's acumen, this world-class collection began to be put together, which continues to grow with every successive administration of the Ulrich Museum. And a number of different media are represented, including the bumper horses and this Klaus Oldenburg fiberglass piece. The crowning glory of the collection is the Joan Moreau mosaic designed for the south wall of the newly built McKnight Art Center. And Dr. Bush, again, this is history, great history, but he convinced Joan Moreau to design the mural, and that's the original painting, which was the basis for the mosaic. It was made in France, in Chartres, by Atelier Loire, based on the design. And then it was shipped to WSU in 1978. And just as the mosaic has become a central focus of the campus and of Wichita, it eventually became a central focus of our work here at WSU. Finally, in 1995, around the same time that we moved from St. Louis to rural central Missouri, our company was contacted by then director of the Ulrich, Don Knobb, upon the recommendation of a colleague of ours. Don asked us to conduct a condition survey of the entire outdoor sculpture collection and also to treat several indoor pieces, including these works by Archipenko and Arp. During this early period, we also worked on the Marino Marini miracle sculpture, and several outdoor pieces include the Hebald family. The father had been stolen, and they recast the father, and it needed to be repatinated based on the other figures. Now, I should point out that conservation and maintenance of the Martin H. Bush collection wasn't new before we got here. Ever since its inception, conservation treatments had been carried out, and there was some intermittent maintenance. And sometimes this was done by outside professionals or local artists or by in-house personnel. But it wasn't regular, and by the time we came on board in the mid-90s, there were a lot of problems with the collection. You can see corrosion occurring on these bronze pieces. In our early association with the Ulrich, we also carried out in-depth maintenance and treatment of the Zuniga, Three Women Walking. And in the upper images on the parts, let's see, on the right, those are areas where we're cleaning off corrosion products and deteriorated protective coatings. And we also reworked the patinas because those sculptures were highly weathered, and we matched well-preserved areas and toned them in to make the sculptures more whole-looking. We also worked on the interior of the bases of these pieces. This is looking at inside the bases. They had iron armatures, and iron in conjunction with bronze is a very bad combination. The iron, you can see how corroded it is. It's literally exploding. And there also was no mechanism for anchoring the pieces. So in the image at the bottom, you can see that we put in a copper alloy bracing system into each of the bases, and in the corners there's a mounting system that can be reused. We put brackets in there for anchoring them. Our relationship with the Moreau mosaic, besides the general survey of 1995, really started in 1997, when then director Don Knobb asked us to embark on a campaign to readhere fallen tiles or tesserae. The condition of the Moreau has always been a concern ever since, even before it was installed. And you can see in the old contact, that black and white piece, that contact sheet, in the worker's hand carrying the mosaic panel, he's got a big piece of glass in his hand that had already fallen off the edge. All we knew about the mural at this point was that the 80 separate sections that make up the whole image were mounted on something. We didn't know what, and the glass and marble tesserae were mounted with a bulked epoxy. But that's all we knew at that point. And the individual panels, we also knew that they were mounted on a steel framework that was designed and installed by Boeing. So the idea of this treatment was to readhere all of the fallen tesserae using extra glass that had been provided by Atelier Loire when the mural was shipped. So they knew there could be a problem with glass falling. And this seemed straightforward enough until we got up on the mural and found this situation, just tesserae just hanging there loosely and waiting to fall. And if you tapped on it, you'd get a little shower of glass. And you can see deteriorated epoxy up there. And in some places, the epoxy hadn't deteriorated, but the adhesion to the glass was non-existent. And in these images, you can see a tessera that we'd taken out of it was loose, and took it out, and it had all this dirt on the back, which showed that it had been loose for quite some time, and it was just held in place by virtue of being locked in with its neighbors. So we gave it our best shot, and for the loose ones, we found all the loose ones. We would remove them, document where they were on each panel. We would clean them and then readhere them using an epoxy that had been recommended by a colleague who works on mosaics. And for complete losses, we cut new pieces using glass that had been provided by Loire, and also we used traditional mosaic cutting techniques with an inverted chisel. We got really good at cutting glass to fit holes. And in the pictures on the right, that red dot is just for reference, but it shows an area where we removed super loose tesserae and readhered them back in place. Everybody felt pretty good by the end of the project, which took weeks and weeks. And we thought that the mosaic was whole and would remain intact. But in a few months, more tesserae started to fall out. And these were mostly ones that hadn't fallen before, but eventually even some that we had readhered would fall. And so this initiated an annual campaign where we were hired for a set time, about a week each year, to readhere loose tesserae. And this was put in place. The contract was drawn up by interim director Ted Ayers, who had a big interest in the mosaic. And so doing that work did keep the mosaic more whole looking year by year. And here we are readhering tesserae during one of those campaigns. And these just show some of the visuals. Befores are on the left and afters on the right. And doing this in different sections each year, again, it kind of kept it more whole. And during this time, we also tested a number of different adhesives known for their compatibility with glass and for holding up in harsh environments. And we would test them for a year. And if it looked promising, if tiles held on for a year, then we would do a slightly larger area. But eventually, even some of those would fail after a whole year of being tested. And these are just some notes that we kept during some of the testing. In 2001, a new director of the Ulrich came on board, Dr. David Butler, And David engaged our company to conduct a new survey of the entire outdoor sculpture collection. And the resulting survey report, completed in the spring of 2002, provided an updated condition baseline for all of the outdoor sculptures. And it also prioritized conservation needs, and that became a basis for doing some more major treatments of the collection. And also starting in 2001, David started having us do regular maintenance of the bronzes. So that's when regular maintenance of the outdoor sculpture collection really started. Dr. Butler founded the Outdoor Sculpture Committee, which was a body consisting of Ulrich Museum staff, WSU physical plant staff, WSU art school professors, local artists, and Wichita community members who had a strong commitment to the arts. This group directed and oversaw activities within the outdoor sculpture collection, from conservation treatments to acquisitions. And for the first several years, they even had a representative from the campus police department who was chosen because of her initiative in keeping an eye on the collection and reporting to the museum whenever she saw any problems. So you might be wondering why frequent maintenance is necessary for outdoor sculpture. The short answer is that we don't want it to end up looking like this. Though I should say, in all fairness, these pieces are ones in Buffalo, ones in Richmond, Virginia, old cities that had a lot of coal burning. And during that time, the environment was particularly bad. But if you look at these up close, you can see that they're actually pitted and etched, and everywhere it's green, it's lower than the original surface of the metal. And any artist's intent or foundry patina is completely gone on these pieces. Here's another example. This is a Henry Moore two-part reclining figure in St. Louis at the St. Louis Art Museum that's in very good condition. It's been well maintained. And this is another version in that edition in Buffalo at the Albright Knox Museum. And this has had obviously no maintenance. And you can see the difference in the piece. And this is a close-up, again, showing the permanent loss of metal in the green areas because it's electrochemical processes like a battery, and where it's green, it's negative, and you're actually losing metal there. Basically, the outdoor environment is really hard on sculptures. And although less dramatic than those images I just showed, ongoing damage just happens every year just by virtue of being outside in the weather and with people contact too. These were the Boteros when we first saw them in 2001, and close-up shows the development of corrosion. And they also have unstable patinas because these are not the original surface finish, and the patinas are a little bit unstable, and the whole thing is prone to corroding. And they had corroded quite a bit before we started doing maintenance on them. And while the regular maintenance has really helped stabilize them in many ways, just the year-to-year surface interaction can make them look shabby pretty quickly. We've got, I don't know what those spatters were that year, but we also get insect nests, and it makes it look like they have little teeth in their mouths. And so that's just an ongoing thing to try to keep up with. Each year, we always find something different. One year, we found these big spatters on the Boteros, and we don't know what it was, but it actually ate right through the patina and causing permanent damage, which we can minimize it, we can make it look better, but the problems are there. There's also problems with old corrosion products showing up on the man's leg. You can see in the pattern of brush mark, there's corrosion because that was when an old coating had been brushed on and it was thinner there and it weathered and corroded. And then we have problems of water rundown from the hard irrigation water that's used. And those are actually mineral deposits and patterns of water runoff. And although it's rare, vandalism sometimes happens on campus. The man's cigarette has been impossible to keep in place. I bet some of you didn't know he has a cigarette right there. And several were supplied with the sculptures, and we used to replace them, but we've stopped doing that because there's only 2 left, and 1 or 2, I'm not sure. And those actually show the original colors of the piece, and so we need to keep them as a reference. And I'm suggesting maybe using something like polycarbonate round stock or something, a black material it's expendable. It could be threaded to fit into that threaded hole. And we have removed that little stump of cigarette in there with the easy out. So something could be threaded in there. So, and just replace it once a week or whatever. And then somebody here likes the robas, and I think Ernie. Just this one, it does have tarnish, but it also just gets a buildup of dust on it that shows up because of its smooth surface. In the Grafley garden, we'll have corrosion happening. Superficial, it's light, but it could keep developing if we weren't on top of it. And so his eyebrows get corrosion. Sometimes there's more on the bust. It sort of depends on the year and how close the plantings are up to it. The Levitt-Lorsky figure, this is how we found it in 2001. You can see the bird droppings on her head are kind of greenish. That's because bird droppings are acidic and they actually interact with the bronze and cause corrosion. And the wax that was being used had built up quite a bit in that surface texture of the piece and had blanched or turned white because of moisture. And then one of the biggest sort of problems on campus is the irrigation. We have to have irrigation to keep the grounds as beautiful as they are. And so that's just wonderful that the grounds look so good. But when they hit the sculpture, like here it is whacking the Barbara Hepworth sculpture, when that water dries, you see the water droplets, you see the mineral deposits present in the well water precipitate out in the patterns of the water droplets in the tide lines. And these are very hard to remove without damaging the patina. So we have to do a fair amount of that every year before we can apply waxes, because if you put a wax over that, then you're just encapsulating hard water deposits. This is probably a thing of the past because they're putting in-ground irrigation around the Millie, but she used to get watered regularly, and that resulted in these really heavy crusts of mineral deposits that were really tenacious. It's not as bad now because Lowell and his team are really careful about trying not to get water on her. It still happens, but not quite to this extent. And another issue that happens with Millie is she gets a buildup of dust and dirt in her scales every year and debris, and that all has to be cleaned out before we can wax her. The Leonard Baskin is another one that's hit with irrigation. You can't see it from a distance, but up close, it really shows up. I think you can see it on their faces, and those are 2 separate years. One year, every year there's hard water deposits. Some years you'll find corrosion products. Because the hard water can act like a sponge. The hard mineral deposits can hold moisture up against the sculpture and causing a little bit of corrosion. So for basic maintenance, that involves inspection, documentation, dealing with hard water deposits and any deteriorated coatings, taking off corrosion products, and then we apply protective coatings on the top, usually waxes. For every sculpture on campus, we have a form that we've made up for it, And it's a way to quickly jot down condition issues. And we say what we did on the piece, and there's photographs that we can show what some of the condition problems are on any particular year. Then we do the surface work, removing any corrosion products or deteriorated waxes. This is one of our interns cleaning scale off the scale. And this again shows before, and this is during removal of those hard water deposits. And again, it's very slow, and you have to be careful not to scratch or wear away the patina. In this image, the scale on the right is, actually, and it's hard to see, but on the edge of the scale, the center part has been cleaned of mineral deposits. Then we wash the sculptures just with soap and water and dry them so we don't get our mineral deposits on there. And then apply protective coatings, and usually it's waxes. Over the years, we've experimented with different waxes, and we found one that we're really happy with. It has good visual and working qualities. For Millie, she gets, as you know, walked on quite a bit and sat on, and that literally wears away the patina from the top surface of the scales. And in the top image, you can see that wearing, and it's just part of the piece. The artist is good with it. And, but even though there is permanent loss, when we apply the waxes and saturate that surface, it does bring back a lot of the original appearance. And in the lower image, you can see waxed scales versus not waxed. And here's as we're waxing up the sides, haven't done the top yet. And in the lower image, the scale on the left has been waxed. So I'll run through some befores and afters of maintenance. This is the Gerhardt Marx before and after. The baby up close. Mom. The Boteros before and after maintenance. This shows the details of the man's back before and after. The side of his head. The lady's dress, dealing with all those surface problems. This is her sides. And the man's legs. These are all after treatment now. And the Lovett Lorsky before and after maintenance. Here's the head. And the Barbara Hepworth. Those aren't exactly the same area, but you get the idea of removing the mineral deposits and then waxing. And the more the more wax that is on the surface, it does get easier to remove the mineral deposits, but they can be still quite tenacious. And this is the Corbel on the sculpture terrace. It gets pretty beat up every year just from the sun, and we try to do maintenance on this one fairly often. And so Millie's befores and after. This is a before. And she's looking better and better over time. But one year we found her like this. And here it is after maintenance. And the rear scale gets really worn. And that's where a lot of kids get on it first to access the rest of the sculpture. And before and after. This was just last year, actually, the side of the face before and after maintenance. And the rear end scale, a lot of times there'll be a little bit of corrosion happening that we can deal with. Baskin before and after maintenance. And detail of the faces. And Mr. Albright before on the left, after on the right. And for the Klaus Oldenburg, that one gets this heavy rundown, which again is lessening, I'm happy to report, but it gets these black runs in the clear coat over the paint, and those are actually ingrained in there, and we have to polish it out with an automotive polish and then apply automotive wax on top of that. And there it is after maintenance. So the images I just showed are examples of just the regular maintenance. Then sometimes it's necessary to do major conservation treatments. And for several years, especially in the early 2000s, we carried out major treatments of several of the sculptures that had high priority numbers from our 2002 survey. And here they are. These included the Robert Indiana Loves, the Henry Moore reclining figure, and the John Carney grandfather's horse. And each of them were really challenging and lengthy treatments, and because of time tonight, I won't go into them very much, but the Love and the horse required structural work, and the Henry Moore had problems with its patina, and that took us, we got to go to the Henry Moore Foundation in England to study his patinas and talk with the people who worked with him when he was alive. So for the Love, though that V was actually filled with water up for about 12 inches. Water had gotten in through some access panels and in open joints, and there's cracks from freeze thaw happening. And so we had to, of course, strip off the paint that was deteriorated, and the joints were actually just tack welded, so some of them were slightly open. So we closed the worst ones and repaired the cracks. And then that took extensive surface work to deal with the welds. And we also designed a ventilation system, a drainage system, and a ventilation system that had not been there before, so that if water were to get inside, it would have an exit. And then after that work, then we had to do body putty on all the interior curved surfaces, because the curves were actually made by flat pieces of aluminum. This is aluminum. And originally they had been body puttied, so we had to redo all of that and then repaint them with the same paint system and color scheme, of course, as the original. And then we reinstalled it with the help of the physical plant. And here it is in position on the pedestal. And you can see it's raised up slightly off the pedestal to allow airflow underneath. And some of you might not remember or know, but it used to be facing the other way. And so only the people exiting the Heskett Center could read it as Love. And so we turned it around so that it read properly from more angles on campus.
Sure.
For the horse, again, from a distance, it looked okay, but this was what was happening up close. There is severe deterioration of a lot of the bumper sections, and some were so bad that they couldn't be used anymore. So for the worst ones, we actually took molds of them and recast them in a material that would be compatible. In this case, we used aluminum because it won't cause the steel to corrode if it's in conjunction with it. And so we made a number of new pieces for it. And then on pieces which was all the other pieces that weren't so badly corroded, we minimized the rust, and then we painted all the backs of all the bumpers with a Carboline product. It's an aluminum-filled epoxy that's made to work with moderately rusted surfaces, and it passivates it and keeps it stable. And the picture on the right shows the interior of the piece with the painted back sides of the bumpers. And then we reassembled it, but in such a way that we would be able to access the interior. We have some panels we can remove so that we can get up inside it and do maintenance. And here's Andy reinstalling it, again with the help of the physical plant staff. And then here it is, some details after treatment. And I don't have a pointer, so I can't show you exactly where the new pieces are, but you can try to guess. But anyway, they blend in nicely. On the image on the right, it's the horse's knee. And anyway, they worked really well in there. And so with the theme that our work is never done, we do have to do regular maintenance on this piece. And Andy is up inside the sculpture. And we are painting the carboline paint on any breakthrough rusting that we see on the backsides of bumpers. I'm on a ladder using a chip brush, and we put them on these wires so we can kind of get inside and get to all these hard-to-reach areas. This just shows an example of the breakthrough rusting. It's mild, but we don't want it to get out of control. So the image on the left shows the rusting, and then it's been painted in the image on the right. And this shows the interior of the horse with the bumpers newly painted, just where they needed it. You don't have to paint it if there's no breakthrough rusting. Then we polish all of the bumpers because they get dull and they also have water spots on them. And for some of the bumpers have pinprick holes in the chrome, and you get little rust runs happening from those. So we polish all that off and actually paint the exposed metal with a clear lacquer. And here's one of our interns painting the wells with the lacquer, because if we don't keep them from corroding, you get rundowns of rust all down the bumpers. And it looks shabby. And another before and after of polishing off the corrosion that happened in these pinprick holes in the chrome. And then they're painted with the clear lacquer after maintenance. I just put that there because of the glint. Meanwhile, we were continuing our annual maintenance of the mural. And by now we had drafted a proposal to conduct a study because we really needed to get to the bottom of the problem. And so we had a study that we were pitching to various directors. And we also had found a successful adhesive. And so this adhesive was recommended by, or the family of adhesives was recommended by a colleague, and we tested it out, and it was really successful. It was a Dow Corning caulk that worked beautifully to hold the tesserae in place. So that's what we were using for the regular maintenance from then on. When Patricia McDonald came on board as the Ulrich director, she recognized the urgency of treating the mosaic and approved the pilot study. This would finally allow us to fully understand the structural problems of the mosaic and to develop and test treatment solutions. So we removed 3 panels for the pilot study. And I will say by now we had also figured out why the mural was so unstable, one of the reasons, and that was during one maintenance session where you see the dotted line, that was an area where we were cleaning it up to readhere tesserae, and we were removing a later epoxy from the original epoxy, and when we pulled it up, the original epoxy came off, and behind it was just rotted, punky particle board that was wet and completely deteriorated. So at this point, we knew that if we were going to try to keep the mosaic in a good condition for long term, that all of those original particle board backings were going to have to be removed and replaced. These were the overall goals of the pilot study. And I don't have them right in front of me, so but that was for a new facing material, method of transfer to new panels, new backing panels, method of transfer, what adhesive would we use, how would we protect the face of the mosaic during transfer, how would we clean the mosaic, and how would we ensure that the mosaic could be treated again in the future, and then how would we reinstall it. So all of those things had to be determined in the pilot study. The pilot study took 3 years to complete, and that was fully documented in a report that was given to the Ulrich, and after a thorough review, it was approved, and soon plans were underway to plan for the treatment and for the funding of it. And over a period of 5 years, that was the goal for getting the mosaic treated. And on a glorious day in October 2011, the mosaic began to be deinstalled with a wonderful celebration as the kickoff, followed by weeks and weeks of careful disassembly of the piece with the able help of the Ulrich Museum staff. So, how years and years later, well, only 8 years later, but this still stays as one of our most important treatments for so many reasons. And I don't have time to go into this treatment, but how we got from this state to this state to getting it put back on the wall and having an intact mosaic that can withstand the weather has just been a huge process for us, and our biggest pride and joy, I would say. And again, I can't really talk about it now for time reasons, but I will put in a big shout out for especially the documentary. These are both available on YouTube. The documentary Preserve Every Piece goes into wonderful detail about the history of the mosaic, how it came to be here, the whole community effort to get it conserved. And it was done here by the Media Resources Center, and it's just a fabulous piece of filmmaking. And then I gave a lecture in 2016 going into a lot of detail about the mosaic. So for anybody who's really interested in the nuts and bolts of the treatment, you can see it on there. So just a quick montage of what we did to the piece. Teasers for you to watch the videos available. A lot of work on the face. We had to work on the back. And the adhesive we used was actually a cousin of the Dow Corning 795, but it's one that's more compatible with the marble tesserae. And it has a 40-year track record, and we believe that it will last a lot longer than that. It's 40 years and counting. And then cleaning, and the whole installation was a big project as well. But the structural aspects of the treatment have really held up well, and every time we look at it, the mosaic is sound. But our work is never done. So I have to give you a little backstory, but this is a view of the mosaic pre-conservation treatment, and there's this very, very intractable haze over the surface of the glass. It is actually caused by glass corrosion products that's sort of inherent with this Venetian glass, and also the other glass, the dent de verre, the sort of translucent glass as well. And this haze had developed over a number of years, but it was really hard to remove. And during the treatment, we did all kinds of testing, and it's all documented in our final treatment report. But we found that the best way to clean the glass was with these very soft fiberglass bristle brushes one tessera at a time, because we couldn't have any residues, we couldn't have anything that would stay behind and cause problems later. And this was clean and efficient. You still had to be very careful. We always trained anybody who worked on it under a stereo microscope so they could see the effect of the tool on the glass. In the lower image, the dotted line shows the cleaned area on the right, and on the left is uncleaned area. And this just shows cleaning a small tessera. And that took a while. It was really slow, because the tesserae are all at different levels and different angles, and they have sharp edges, and there's no way you can wipe over the surface, because you tear your hand up for one thing, but you just wouldn't get every surface of the glass clean that way. So it has to be one at a time. So in 2017, a year after the mosaic was installed, we went up and checked it and saw a bit of a haze on the surface. Now, this was mostly rundown of dirt and also possibly rundown of the mineral components that are still in the original epoxy mortar, which we retained, and watched the videos to see why. It was very important to keep that aspect of the mosaic for visual reasons. And here's a close-up. But the good news is it's pretty easy to remove. It actually wipes off. So we experimented and developed a method of treating the whole mosaic, just cleaning it first by vacuuming each panel and then going in with a damp microfiber cloth to clean each and every tessera, the glass ones. But it's way, way faster than the conservation treatment had to be. And in this image, I think you can see in the upper right of center, a panel has been cleaned versus the surrounding ones that haven't been cleaned. And the image on the left has not been cleaned, and there it is after cleaning. Same cleaned and uncleaned. And the upper panel in this image has been cleaned. So it's important to do this periodically, both for visual reasons, but also so we don't, that's before and after, so we don't get back to this state, because that would be very, very hard to deal with. And so we need to stay on top of it every few years. And even with the ongoing care that I've showed you, sometimes environmental impacts, people and weather require occasional further in-depth treatment, like the recent treatment of the Love that Joe mentioned. And we also did some work on Barbara Hepworth and the Ricky. And on the horse, this is an errant bumper that was not in bad condition to treat in our early treatment in the early 2000s, but it developed, and because of where it is on the horse, we couldn't do maintenance, we couldn't reach it. So this is something we'll address just locally. So I'm going to wrap up soon, and I want to say that it is truly an honor to be part of the preservation of this wonderful outdoor sculpture collection and to be a part of the 50th anniversary celebration, part of a community that makes such an investment in creating this beautiful and inspiring environment. We have learned so much from revisiting our treatments over the years and are able to constantly evaluate what we've done and try to find better treatments and materials. Find out what works best to preserve this collection. And do we have all the answers? No, not yet. And is there more work to do? Yes, there always is. But it is just a joy to work with the Ulrich Museum personnel who truly value and care for this collection, this beloved community treasure and resource. And it's really because art has so many sides. There's the aesthetic, the cultural, even the spiritual aspect of art, but all that is supported by the physical aspect. And that needs to be maintained as much as you can by hands-on treatment. And it really honors the art itself and the artist to try to slow the inevitable changes. Things change, but we try to slow them or minimize the impact of the outdoor environment on them. The Ulrich and the WSU community continue to just be wonderful stewards of this amazing collection, which is such a major part of the campus community, the city of Wichita, and beyond. And because of the commitment and dedication of the Ulrich Museum and the support of the whole Ulrich community, these artworks will continue as living entities on WSU's campus, delighting and inspiring us now and for generations to come. And thank you very much. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Brenda?
I just like to thank you so much for all the lovely care of this amazing collection. It's really fun.
Well, thank you.
Just tell me your favorite feast.
Oh, that's tough. I love the little Gerhardt marks, mother and child, and three women walking. Can I have two? Okay. I'll probably come up with another one, but yeah, those two are very special to me. Yes.
Let's just say the comes finally went to say it.
Okay. Yeah, we used a stainless steel. It was a stainless steel panel that we designed with a local fabricator who designed it with us. It has perforated stainless backing, and it had to be perforated because the adhesive we used needed air in order to cure, and it also made it much lighter to be perforated. And we had hat channel that was also fairly light, and it all allowed for movement within the panel itself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's Eric. Maybe you mentioned this how the way she covered the treaty with car wax.
Mm-hmm.
Wax types of material. It seems like a new concept coming out is ceramic coloring. Is that something that you thought?
I haven't looked at those yet. I would need to know about their longevity and like, can you remove them easily? And so that's something to explore. Yes, as part of our work to do. Yeah, because again, we're always interested in retreatability and how easy it will be to continue treating something, and if a coating has to come off, how easy is it to remove it? But that is something definitely to look into. Okay, thank you.